Because when when he came to visit us in Wisconsin, we'd been out rowing the boat around the lake, and I thought, I'll bet I can get this old guy to step out onto the raft and just row off and leave him and let him worry a little bit. And he wouldn't go for it. No, I'm not getting out. And so I tried. I said, well, Granddad, let's just get out and rest. You go first. And he would not get out of the boat. And years later, he would tell this story, and he'd talk about me. He'd give me this really whiny, like, Granddad, why don't you get out of the boat and get on the raft? It didn't work, I'm sorry, but that's pretty vivid, so.
You know, I don't know. There's so many, because I practically grew up at Grandma's. You know, Billy and I can talk about him. Billy and I pretty much grew up at Grandma's. What? She is.
Oh, Judy, he's the oldest now.
Yeah, he is the oldest now. Oh, my gosh. I have to bow to the elder. But Billy and I practically lived at Grandma and Granddad, so there's so much that we can remember, you know, about, Granddad painting on it. Did you remember Granddad? Here's Granddad. He used to shoot squirrels. So he shot all the squirrels in the neighborhood, and they were all gone. There was no squirrels in the neighborhood at all.
He could take a rock in his hand.
Yeah, well, so what did he do? He went out and painted a squirrel on the tree because he missed the squirrels. That was Granddad. Yeah. And Grandma, Sonia and I were talking about Grandma. We'd be all the family were all loud. We were really loud. Yeah, right? Yeah, we were really, really loud. So everybody's loud, and Grandma would sit there and she'd smile. Rocking in her chair, smiling. And pretty soon we found out she turned off her hearing aid. And you know, later on, my dad did the same thing.
So do you family. Papa just wouldn't wear his.
Billy, why don't you come up and say something?
Yeah, come on, Billy. You're the oldest. Come on. Stand up like we are. Come on.
I can't get out. Let me stand right here.
Okay, you can get a big voice. Good. Earl.
So many memories.
Pick a couple.
Pick a couple. Well, yeah. Dick's, us kids harassed each other. I was the quiet one.
Y'all know better, Bill.
Grandmother Pruitt's one time, we were just little kids, and we were supposed to take a nap or something. I was laying down on the bed, and all at once I woke up with a terrible headache. She went and got a frying pan, not the aluminum, the cast iron frying pan, caught me right in the middle. All scars. But it was always enjoyable to go to Grandma's house. But I miss those times.
Years ago, Billy and I were teenagers. You know, we used to do. The rest of you younger cousins don't know. Billy he was writing at the time, and he'd bring soda pop. You know, what was usually Pepsi, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd bring soda pop, and he'd hide it. We waited till all you little kids were asleep, and Billy and I would go outside and drink the soda.
I have a memory of the grandparents, and I only got to see them together just a couple of times. And the first time we met, we went to Kansas City to meet them. And she was sitting in her wheelchair, and I was telling Sonia and Judy about it, and I said, I have one regret. She never really understood my son's name, our firstborn. And I said, I would say his name is Jason. Well, Jasper is really cute. And I'd say, no, his name is Jason. Uh-huh. And she'd say later, well, Jasper did that, and it was so cute. And I'd say, his name is Jason. Uh-huh. And she never did, to my knowledge, know that my poor little boy was named Jason.
Sonia.
Uncle Jerry, well, I wonder if Uncle Jerry should
Uncle Jerry, Uncle Jerry, or Uncle
Yeah.
Yeah.
say something about their parents or just, all the big fun times at their house.
You know, I'm a preacher, and I've got my notes, and I can go.
I've got a hook. I've got a hook.
What do you want to say?
I was a wrestler, so I don't pay attention to hooks.
Uncle Virgil, you're on.
Well,
I'm with the one that was thrown out, and I went to Venezuela in 1950. They didn't want to give the family a bad reputation by having me hang around Kansas City. So I made a bad reputation in Venezuela. I do have good memories coming home.
Yeah. You know what we used to call Uncle Virgil? You remember your other name, Uncle Virgil?
Uncle Pee-wee.
I had several names.
Uncle Pee-wee, because he was so little. He was so skinny.
Well, I was always known as Young Haney because all the others was ahead of me. I don't think anyone ever knew me as Virgil. It's like I don't know my son as Virgil either.
We don't know what to call him either.
We always thought he was one of the kids. You know.
Yeah.
Well, Billy was doomed, I think, to be a baseball player because he used my head for a ball. Bat. It was, you can see it right here. He denied it.
Well, yeah, it was kind of quiet.
I was especially quiet after he hit me in the head. No, it was, I think, difficult to be away.
Yeah.
But what I thought.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know if we should go next.
Mike,
but
Mike is the next one.
I just want to say really quickly, you know, all you guys that didn't get to come and hang out at Grandma's house on Sundays. We had Sunday dinners, and they were mass confusion, lots of laughter. It was the most amazing kind of time to every, you know, and I look at, you know, it all comes back when you see these pictures that were coming up online all of a sudden. You know, I'm sitting there with curls in my hair and the old furnace that was there, and Billy probably throwing food under the table, and you know.
Do you remember one of the traditions that one of the brothers or one of Grandma's sons did when they come over on Sundays?
The throwing of the rolls? Potatoes? I don't know who
Uncle
I don't know
Carl,
about this.
whenever he came into town, he would always bring a 10-pound bag of potatoes.
I didn't know that.
He remembers the days growing up and didn't have a whole lot of guests, and he promised that when he was able, he would bring something. And he always came to these sacrifices.
I saw him do that at least 3 times. I didn't know
And
that.
you remember when we were little kids, if we got in trouble around the Haney house, the hoot nanny came out.
Oh, yeah, the hootenanny.
That's what we've heard.
Yeah.
Back and for those who don't know what food nanny is.
They were very loud.
Sonia, I have a question for you. Was it true those Sunday dinners that you would order the pies and expect you to eat 2 pieces?
Me?
No.
I don't know that. I don't remember that.
They were made
I
homemade.
do
They were never
remember.
ordered.
I
Yeah.
do remember that we all, especially on birthdays, Thelma, Billy's mother.
She would ask everybody what their favorite pie was.
Oh, you would. Well, not only that, you would get all your favorite stuff.
Oh,
Whether
yes.
it was-
cherry, banana cream, you get both, you know.
Yes.
Oh, and angel food cake, and I love angel food cake. And
Boston cream
And
pie.
Oh.
Yes.
she did everything. It was amazing.
Cherry pie.
Cherry
Cherry
pie.
pie.
But you know, it's
Maybe
funny,
cherries
I
with balls.
look at some of these pictures and it doesn't look like it's all that large, that room. It felt like it was at least this size.
Is that one?
And I see it's all crowded in, you know, all just really crowded in.
Oh, it wasn't
seen
as
those
big.
pictures
It
of that.
really wasn't.
No, that front room
No.
was about from that door to maybe
Yeah.
that started that bulletin board there.
And then all the way back. Well,
Right.
maybe the end of the bulletin board all the way back.
But we
But I
had
mean in
so
width.
much food.
Yeah.
Everybody had their favorite
Yeah, eventually we
stuff.
had to move to the basement
And
garage.
it went around, you know, Grandma's house had a living room, and then it went into the kitchen, and then around by the hallway. You could go round and round and round in circles.
Yeah.
And we did. Everybody was always going around in circles. But there's a grandma story. I know this is really silly, but I do remember this. I had long curls, and when my mother went into the hospital to have my brother, my grandma they moved my bed downstairs when she was in the hospital. And my mother, the last thing she said to my grandmother before she left, don't braid her hair, because she kept it in curls. And of course, when she came home, I had one braid. And Granddad, We used to live upstairs. We used to live up on the top. We lived on the bottom when Dad was in the Coast Guard, and we moved up to the top of this fabulous home. I love that house. And Granddad would wait till my mother left to go do an errand, and I would be with my brother in the wagon, pushing him back and forth, and she said, "Don't let him wake up. Keep him asleep." And as soon as my mother would leave, my grandmother would look upstairs and wake him up. So those are two things.
I think Mike's on.
Sonia already asked me if I could get some of my biographical history. I'll have to go up and get it. Let me explain why it was given. I belong to a retirement association. People work for Creel. Creel was the company I worked for in Venezuela, was an affiliate of Exxon. And we just came from the 21st reunion. It's a 4-day reunion. We have a speaker Friday night normally from Exxon, and on Saturday a speaker from Venezuela. Well, the industry was nationalized in 1976. We still got speakers from the industry, but in 2003 we couldn't get any. And I helped form a club in Venezuela similar to the one here, and so we agreed to supply the speakers. But 1 year, in 2009, none of the people were available or could be available to make a speech. Asked me to give a speech from Venezuela. I have it upstairs. I'll go get it. It was unusual because for 2 reasons. It would be the first year that the speaker from Venezuela was not a Venezuelan. Secondly, I was the MC, so I'd have to introduce myself. I was very embarrassed by that, and it only took me 3 or 4 days to write the speech. Let me go get it.
Well, we'll do it after lunch. Let's do it after lunch.
Okay.
That way you have time to have lunch. And
Yep.
we'll get
I
it
don't know if
done.
they can stand on a full stomach.
I think Mike want to say something, and then we'll get the lunch stuff out of the refrigerator and everything, and we'll move it over to you.
It may be something of a shock to some people, but Granddad could be a little ornery.
Oh.
I had heard stories about this, but I actually observed it happen. He was in the grocery store, and when somebody was getting groceries and they weren't looking, he would take things off the shelf and drop them in their basket. And they would get up to the checkout stand and start pulling stuff out, and where did this come from? And he would just kind of wait up at the checkout stand and laugh as they pulled out all these objects that he had dropped in. And when we were living in Wisconsin, Grandma came up for a visit, and he was sitting on the shore of the lake and our end of the lake, and people would anchor their boats by brush piles and go fishing. And Granddad would sit there with a handful of pebbles, and when the fisherman wasn't, paying much attention, he would throw a pebble. And they would hear it hit the water and think a fish jumped. And so they would get up their anchor and row over to that spot and drop their anchor and start fishing. And then in a little while, Granddad would throw a rock somewhere else. And he'd just have these fishermen rowing all over the place, and he would just sit on the shore and laugh. So he had a little honor streak in him every once in a while. So it was always fun to hear his stories and watch him do things that I would have gotten in trouble for doing if I had done it.
Of course, none of the boys inherited that, though.
Yeah.
Not at all. Oh no, of course not. Poor Uncle Vernie never did, never did figure out not to ask for a little piece of pie with some whipped cream.
I remember Jaren, I don't know if she was pregnant with Haney or Melissa at the time, but she'd come over to Granddad and Grandma's house feeling fine and sit down in the middle of Grandma and Aunt Thelma and Aunt Margie, and they'd all start talking about how miserable she looked. And really, I find, oh, you look so miserable. So by the time she was done, she was feeling miserable.
Yeah. Karen,
What?
you got something to share?
Well, with respect to Grandma and Grandpa, not so much as I do about the uncles, with which I have many. It was almost as though the standard was how ill-behaved you could be. All of us had this tremendous thing to live up to, was to just see what sort of stupidity we could come up with. And so I have endless stories of things that my uncles did. I mean, this, and I never know if they're true because they always got embellished on
Every
it.
one of them.
Yeah. Right. In some case, they minimized them.
I have them put away in cold storage.
For those of you that don't know this joke, apparently my uncle pinned all of his medals and any others that he could find to his drawers, and then at some party dropped them.
So, no, really, I'll tell you, if you go to what happened.
Yeah.
I was a bachelor this time, and we always had parties when the school teachers.
And I wasn't there.
So lucky.
And so I would engage them in conversations. I just got back from vacation. I'd been in various contests and so forth. Would they like to see my medal? And I did have the medal fitted to my shorts, you see. And I would show them the medal. One time, there was no pen. They didn't get to see the medal.
So I suspect that there are probably endless stories such as this one to be had. I know that apparently my father put cheese in the school. Which was,
Marjorie did the same thing in her office.
there we go.
Vinegar cheese.
Vinegar.
Yes.
And I also remember the last family reunion when I think it was the 50th anniversary, and Sonia and I and others were sleeping downstairs, and in Grandma and Grandpa's house there was a laundry chute, and there was a tap, tap, tap on the laundry chute, and we opened it up, and our fathers poured water all over. They sure sheeted the bed.
You know, your father taught Billy and I how to do practical jokes to all the uncles and aunts that came to visit. And the laundry chute was our favorite.
Mm-hmm.
That was a favorite. That was a favorite school. That was your favorite for your father.
Does Chris, what did Uncle Carl teach you about playing basketball? How to intimidate the other guys, your shoestrings untied.
Yeah.
She had to get a notebook out. He was telling me all.
Well, I think my father played clean basketball. Which was a dirty trick, you probably knew. And we always look forward to Uncle Virgil coming because he got books behind, such as Passionella. Do you remember Passionella?
I didn't remember nothing.
And a few rubber ducks and a hula dancer that pumped the pump and it became more.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Let me tell you, if you think about education and your father, when he graduated from Olathe, he was ill. He had measles. He infected the whole class. Also, at Fort Scott Junior College, while they're marching down, he threw red pepper in the air. The answer pulled the fire alarm. He didn't finish it. Junior college there.
It's unfortunate this is such an age-mixed audience because this modeling effect is bound to run on.
I remember my mother telling me on the second date with my father that one of the brothers had taken a tea towel and dumped a little jar of mustard in it and folded it like a diaper and handed it to her. And I handed it to her and said, "This will be next." But she came back anyway.
What about Uncle Jerry jumping in her lap?
And Uncle Jerry jumped in her lap and wanted his fingernails filed.
Your Uncle Carl on that same incident with the sheet had inserted a full water bottle, and Sister Margie, as he came in, gave him a swat in that area, and the water bottle went off, and it created quite a sensation.
Well, Carl, aren't you lucky you were named after my father?
There's a Haney tradition, another one that Sharon learned about when she.
Well, I thought it was just a big lie because I'd heard it first from Ida.
Oh, yes.
When we were going together, they lined up that long table in the front room, and I asked, and it was down close to Carl to pass the rolls. Well, he passed them all right. He thought, and I felt like that. I think the Haneys invented before Lambert's throwed rolls. They went back to Sonia's.
Right. They invented the forward pass.
And then I always got called by Grandma. I'm Cher, but Grandma seems not to be able to get my name right. I was called Sharon, Jaren, Karen.
But the new wives, if you ask for something, you have to be careful what you ask to have passed to you. They would get it thrown at.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was lucky though.
You were lucky?
Yeah.
No, I tell you, I was very lucky. I walked into their home for the first time when they picked me up at the airport. I walked into the home.
Granddad drove you?
And
Oh.
it was love at first sight. I loved them and they loved me. So I was very, very lucky.
You were wonderful.
Yes, a very, very lucky person.
And you stayed with them?
Yes, 2.5 years. Yes.
Yeah. I remember one time.
It was a beautiful
Yeah.
honeymoon. About granddad, of course, he talked endlessly before. Many times he would be telling me something, and I would say, Dad, I have to go to the bathroom. He said, go ahead, honey. And I would go to the bathroom and come back and still talking. I mean, I thought I'd be present. And of course, Mom was always very polite and very, she laughed a lot about the things that happened around her, but most of the time, she just had her hearing aid turned on, so for the sake of peace, and that's why she kept her sanity, really.
Do you guys remember your breakfast with the platters of fried bacon, fried pork chops, fried potatoes, fried eggs
cooked with the bacon,
and cooked with, and then of course
and the
gravy,
Biscuits and gravy.
biscuits and gravy, and all of her
and honey,
and honey,
and
this was just breakfast. When we first started, and
there was only 3 of us at the time. And orange juice, yes.
orange juice, and it didn't matter if there were 3 people or 12 people. And it was, yes.
And then Grandma would make this awful coffee.
Oh, yes.
And Dad would take half of that coffee, and then would say, would you pour some water into it? Because it's too strong.
But the other thing about the coffee is he'd take his saucer, remember, and he'd pour his coffee in the saucer, and then he'd...
Yes, that's right.
I think he did just to drive everybody crazy.
When guests came to the house, it was good manners to offer them coffee, and Dad would always say, have some coffee. It's already been saucered and blown.
And my mom used to say that when she would come to dinner, every time she'd say please and thank you, the boys would holler out, Mom, she's saying dirty words. And then when she'd try to get a piece of cake, would slap her hands with the utensils. And then Grandma would come back in and say, well, didn't you want any cake, Faye? No, thank you. I'm not hungry.
And Karen's mom, when she first met Grandma, she had that accent. Grandma thought she was cussing. She said a few words and she thought she was cussing, and she went, okay.
Tony, I think you're on next.
You know, one of the most memorable trips I ever had was, you remember how Grandpa painted the records, the old records?
Oh, yeah.
Big Piney or Little Piney?
Big Piney.
No, but I mean the
Yeah, the picture's Big Piney.
okay. Down where the port's at, where they came from. I'd always seen them pictures, and there was caves up on the bluffs, and very pretty, you know, with the stream and everything. We made that trip and went down and found that place. You can't get in there anymore. But no, it's all grown up.
Dad stayed in that one of those caves. They call it Miller's Cave. Miller's Cave. There was a bunch of art in artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that was the neatest trip to go down and actually see what.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And we can't go back to Dad's birthplace.
My grandmother.
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
One of those Indian artifacts was his grandmother.
Yeah.
Mary, did Margie help you clean your clothes when you come home?
No, that was Ida.
How was she helping you then?
Ida was living with us during the wartime. A lovely lady. Fact is, the first time, she was only a couple of years older than me when Ed started going with her. And when she came to visit us, Ed was always special about his cars. He left his cars with the key in it, and Ida was by the side. She hung on the ironing board, the running board, and I had no driver's license, but I jumped into Ed's car and took off and drove off with Ida. And we were gone for a little while and come back, and Ed was really livid because little brother had taken his girlfriend off for a ride.
And you didn't have a driver's license.
I had no driver's license. In fact, the only thing I've driven was a truck across the potato.
Did Marjorie actually try to stop the car, or joke that she was going to stop the car and go, whoa?
Yeah. We had verbal displays quite a bit.
Who sewed the lace on your skivvy?
Oh,
That was Ida. I'm just
That's
getting
my
around to that. Ida was going to do my washing before I left, and she did my washing, packed it up nicely, and put it in my bag. It couldn't have been, I did write her a letter and tell her the outcome, because it couldn't have happened at a more ideal time for Ida. She had sewed on my skivvies a nice little lace bottom on each leg. Now, on the fireboat that we were in, there were 8 of us, and all of them were around. We had a table that was our recreation area, and then we had my galley, where my cook area. Then we had the lockers and so forth. And you couldn't. It was just very cramped. And so my locker was right at the end of where all the guys were sitting and having coffee and so forth. And I was back, and they were kidding me about my trip and everything. And I said, yeah, I set my thing down. The first thing I took out of my bag was the shorts that Ida had put lace on. And as I took them, I took them out by the thing on top, and it couldn't have been prepared more. I took them out like this, and the shorts unfolded. And here was right at the end here, I'm standing, my underpants was lace around the bottom. And I wrote and told her the outcome, because she really enjoyed what she does.
She had a great time doing that. And she made, for your car, she took, I think it was leopard skin. Was it leopard skin?
Probably, but I want to tell you that she did the same thing
Yeah, I
to
know.
me on my shorts. I have more shorts since.
I think you did some other stuff with your water, your face as well.
Remember us kids running out there and jumping in it?
But, you know, I remember a car story from my father. Apparently he had this old jalopy, and at some point there was a fire in the old jalopy, and my father used the most readily available fire extinguisher. That was a truck. I said, I stand corrected, it was a truck. But their extinguisher was still inside.
With a little help, I could provide.
Well, I heard that your dad, they lived out in the country, and when it rained, the road was muddy, and people would drive by and get stuck in the mud, and he would, for a price, pick up the wheel to the car and get it unstuck. And then when it started to dry out, he went to the well and started pouring water on it.
That was Carl.
That's what I said.
Yeah, he kept that wet for a half year
Roberta, the story that we were talking about your dad getting locked up.
Yeah, my dad finally acknowledged that he had been locked up in a building. He only wrote 3 sentences, though. He mentioned that they had the stone building, and there was a little garden they had over there, and they were always over there working, and said, well, somehow Carl and Ed locked me in this building, and were afraid to let me out, and that's all he would say on it. But for years, he denied that ever happened. Most of my growing up, he denied it.
It was a stone building or something, like little place you could look out.
Yeah.
They were teasing some carrots.
Yeah. And said when Grandma and Grandpa was coming home, they ran like a Dickens.
I asked Papa about it, and he said, oh, boys made that up. That never happened. I never did that.
But he wrote it down in his memoirs. He admitted it. He wrote some good stories.
All these vignettes, I have a complete presentation to close up with when we get to it. But on the siblings, we had identities with each one of them. There was, 7 of us. Virgil and I are here at the tail end of the 7. But we had identifications for them. Bob was the big brother. He was the classic And he was a boxer. He'd been a bouncer in a tavern, and he was tough. And he and my cousin were both kind of tough. And they used to follow the carnivals around where the professional wrestlers, on the way down, you could get money if you stayed 3 rounds. Well, Raymond Dean was just like Bob. They big and tough, and they got banned from the carnival circuit because they would team up, one go in and the other go in, and they would usually win the money, and so they wouldn't get on it. So Bob was the big brother, and I'll tell my big brother on you, and the reputation was that don't mess with the Haney boys, because when you deal with one of them, you got to deal with the next one in line, and the last one is a boxer. Don't fool with them. So Bob was the big brother, and Ed was the recluse. He was kind of off on his own. He was the scout. He was in the Boy Scouts. He was into electronics. He had the first radio that I can remember, and it was a radio with earphones, and you could have 4 earphones plugged in, and you could listen to the radio in this old Atwater tin. Yeah, and so that was Ed, kind of off by himself most of the time. And then Carl was kind of in between and ahead of me and behind Ed, and he challenged my younger brother. My younger brother, Virgil, he was always known as the brain. He was the smartest one of the family. And
That's true.
They saved the best for last.
Pictures and go ahead,
And when we were in grade school, Virgil would sit there and do all the lessons of everybody. We went to the board in those days and did our lesson on the board, and Virgil would be back there, and we had workbooks. He had about 3 grades ahead on workbooks. The teacher didn't know what to do with it. He was so smart. So she pushed him ahead of 1 grade. And then she came home to Dad and said, after that, said, we can't handle him yet. We want to push him ahead another one. Well, Dad said no, because he didn't want him to be one of those idiots that gets all head and no understanding. So anyway, Virgil was our brain, and Carl, he was our athlete, and always challenged him. But I said Carl was almost the smartest. When Carl and I were growing up, we were on the farm, and he and I got switched once in a while. I don't know why, because I was perfect in every way, but we got into trouble, and we would get switched. And in those days, Dad would give us a knife, go cut you a switch. And so we would go cut a switch, bring it back, and then we would take our medicine. Carl never got hit more than twice. Then he'd take Carl, he'd fuck Carl across the face, a broken switch. Years later, when Carl and I were working together on drug abuse conferences in the State Department of Education, we had roomed together, and I finally got him to say, I said, Carl, how in the world did you only get swatted twice? He said, well, it was easy. He said, Dad gave us that knife, and he said, you cut your switch, I cut my switch, and when you started back, I just took the knife and cut it about halfway through. So we walked home, and there with the switch, and so I figured that Carl was practical smart, where Virgil was academic smart. Anyway, so
that must be where my mom got the idea about the switch, because I always had to go out and cut my own.
Yeah, and your mother was the mother part. She was gone by the time I was growing up, and we always looked at Thelma as the mothering type, and we were rewarded by being able to go from the farm and stay a week with either Thelma or Margie. Margie was always the Spitfire. She played basketball, and nobody wanted to play against her team when she was playing, because she was nasty mean. She was foul. She was just all over the people. So anyhow, she was also full of vim and vigor and a lot of practical jokes, and so she was our joker. So anyway, that was Bob and Ed and Carl and Virgil and Marjorie and Thelma. the siblings. And of course, the two older girls had given caretaking of us younger babies, and that never left us, because on the farm, after they started working, well, they would come home for Saturday and Sunday, and they always brought us 3 candy bars, and Carl and Virgil and I stood like little birds with their mouths open, waiting for our candy bars that would come in, and we weren't poor, but we had to go borrow garbage. That's how poor. But anyway, we getting into winter time, and it was kind of tough time. And I'll never forget that Margie brought us boots that we could wear in cold weather, and she was always taking care of us. And so the girls, both of them, were kind of caretakers. So our family was 7 of us, really close.
Yeah, Margie brought Dad a pair of chaps one time. He had never seen chaps before. He thought they were pants. So he put it on his chaps and left a little behind.
I was proud of those chaps. Now we're getting into the areas of personal hygiene. We had one fire. We had a big stove, and we would get it almost red hot. And you could get warm if you could get about 3 feet from the stove. And the rest of it was, we lived in this shack, and it was called, it was an old shack, that's what it was. And Bob, the old brother, and I, big brother and I, we slept on an out porch I had a lean-to porch with no windows. It had the place for windows, but no windows. And so we slept under what we call shuck mattresses. Now, that's a word you want to remember. A shuck mattress was a container that you would stuff corn shucks in so it was soft, and you lay on and that keep you warm too. And you start out this high on the corn shucks when you went to bed, and by the morning you were down to about like this. It was harder than bricks. Well, anyhow, Bob and I slept out on the porch. I don't know where Virgil slept, but I remember one time, as I said, we're getting into personal ideas. But Virgil came in we'd come with our pants in our hand and run in where it was warm in those 3 feet. He got a little closer than 3 feet. He turned around to put his pants on. I don't know whether you still got the scar or not.
You want to see?
But both cheeks of his hit that and I don't know how long, but anyhow, he was marked for life, and he has to prove that we heated by a heating stove in the front room. And it was wonderful going on with our family. But don't mess with one of them, because there's another one coming along. We went to school, and we had mules, and Dad had to work the mules on Saturday. And so Virgil and Carl, in 1 year, Carl and I and Virgil were all in the same grade school. We would ride the mule. 3 of us on a mule, ride 4 miles to Pleasant Hill Mule. We'd get off, and we'd put the reins across the necks of the mule, slap it on the back, and the mule would go back home. And then, of course, we'd walk home because it was still daylight in the evening. So, but Dad could work the mules during the day. So we utilized everything in a wonderful way.
Let me interrupt for a moment. We used to ride mules also, and you can actually ride a mule up a haystack and turn it over.
I will verify that. And I was fantasizing, and I don't know whether I was the Lone Ranger or somebody, but yeah, I rode it up the stack because I was going up the mountain. The mule's feet slipped out, came down, and there it lay. And you know who I had to go to get that mule where it was on its feet? Which one would you guess that I had to go to?
Bob.
Oh, he wasn't even there. He was with the circus being the sideshow manager.
Carl. Me, I wouldn't let him stay there.
Carl had to go down. It was embarrassing because he took the mule's feet and turned it over where it would get his feet under it and get up. Yeah, so that was our story here. Am I ready to do the summing up a little bit?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm ready to go. Okay. Well, we're all...
She has spoken, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I didn't know what a patriarch was, but somebody says that's what I are now. A patriarch, the oldest in the family. And we're all aging, but how do you know that you're getting older? We've got our young children here. How do we know we're getting older? Well, I'll tell you, everything hurts. And what doesn't hurt doesn't work. I have a little black book. But you know, most of the books end up with initials that are MD. And you look at your children, and they begin to look middle-aged. You go to the health club, and you enroll in a health club, and then you don't go. You look forward to it, dull you sit in a rocking chair and wait for somebody to get you started. You look forward, as I said, to that dull evening, and your knees buckle, and your belly won't. You dial long distance and you get tired waiting for the answer. Your back goes out more than you do. You turn out the light for economic reasons rather than romantic. You bite into a steak and your teeth stay there. Your pacemaker goes off and the garage door goes open. And the best part of your day is over when your alarm goes off. You get exercise, acting as pallbearers for those people that did do exercise. There's a lot of reasons that you can look at for growing old. I don't know where you stay. You know, we come together for a reunion today with the Haney name, the Haney clan, and many of you have seen or know about the record that Thelma did and was guiding getting our history. We do come from Lowland, the name Haney. We come from Lowland, Scotland, and also the American Indian tradition to begin with. We all talk about mom and dad, and that's the start of it. The location of our homeland name was Sorby, Scotland, and it's in Wixonshire in Scotland. And we have a castle that is there, and to my knowledge, the only one of this family that ever got to see Sorby, Scotland Valley was Carl, and he got the information on the background. The castle laid in ruins in 1748, and the family began to rebuild it, and it now stands as a place for tourists to go to. It was a clan of ecclesiastics. The Scotlands are violent and so forth, but the Haney clan they were ecclesiastics, which means they participated in public debate and got along with the government. The history of the Haney name was developed by a man named Alexander Hanna, and he lives in Inverness. We had name changes, Haney, Hannah, and it was the oldest family in Galway and one of the oldest in all Scotland. And they had about 3 or 4 names of the old Scottish names that was developed. It was the earliest mention of a name in Scotland in 1296. So the Haney name itself, under all the translations, we go back traceable to 1296. They were allegiance to the King John Balliol. There was a list of 8 towns in Scotland with the Haney name and Haneyville and so forth. There were 4 towns in product of Ulster, and in Pennsylvania, there's a town called Pennistown, and also one in Lexington, Virginia. And in other towns in Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, there are the Haney names on towns. And when the clan came to the United States, the name was changed to Hanna, Hanna. And going into the Ozarks, they had a brogue, Haney, with an E on the end of it, and somewhere the papers got changed into Haney. So William Hanna Haney was the first, Haney, H-A-N-E-Y, and William Haney II continued it. And Russell S. Haney, my dad cried when he went to the second grade. The teacher wanted to know what his middle name was. Dad said, I don't have one. He didn't have one. I am Russell Haney. You have to have a middle name. So he went home and was crying, and his aunt was there, and her name was Simpson. And she said, don't cry, you can have my name. And so Dad's middle name, Simpson, was given to him by an aunt after birth. Now, we have a lot of children here, and in the Ozarks, they did not have doctors to deliver, and they had these wives that would midwives that would deliver children. And one of my uncles, the mother was expecting and said to the girl, "Go get Aunt Lucy." So she got on her horse, went over to get Aunt Lucy, and it was long toward dark. And they came back, and the time was there. And my aunt said, "Here, put a pile of oat straw down." And she said, "Lay here and to have that baby." And so Aunt Lucy got there, and she said, "Would you bring that lantern and hang it up here so I can see to work?" And so she did, and immediately, almost immediately, the baby was born. And she took the baby out, and everybody was, "Oh, wait a minute. And so they went back, and it was another baby. It was twins, and they were ready to deal with that. Oh, here comes another one. And here comes the triplets for the first time in the county. And my uncle said, "Take away that lantern. I think it's drawing them." But that was how Dad got his middle name. We had, Dad started out as a farmer, a blacksmith. He was town marshal for a while in his early days. And so anyhow, we had our 7 children. They had our 7 of us. And so most of us have had some of the anecdotes of each of the children. And so we're down to just Virgil and I as the original siblings. Haney, Hannah, the clan. It's a name that has made a place in history. But you know, I looked at that hand as I was looking for getting our groundwork and getting our roots. And as I looked at it, I began to notice something else to the Haney name. A name like Williams. My mother, Dad, and Mom married into the Williams, and the Williams clan came into our bloodline. And then we had names like Serrano, Roberts, Geesley daughter. I didn't know what that had to come along. Pruitt, Curtis, Boardman, Foster, and Blanchard. Those names come into the Haney name, adding the richness of all of those backgrounds. We made a lot of contributions to the society in so many ways. We were farmers. Dad was a blacksmith. We had factory workers. We have engineers. We have education. We have teachers, counselors, coaches. We've got artists. We've got mechanics. We've got people working in industry. We've got medicine with doctors and nurses. We've got entertainment with experience in radio and television and movies. In music with the talent of many of our children. Our family is blessed. We even have preachers. In the old days, the Haney family, they had a number of preachers there, and we still have one in the family left to go. We've got the Nordic from Iceland and from Norway. We've got the Spanish, what?
And Texas.
Well, I'll get to that foreigner. We have the Mexican emphasis, and we have the Venezuelan emphasis. We have English, and we have Scottish, and we have Irish, and all of these. We've got name changes, we've got culture changes, we've got the richness. I don't know any family that we couldn't put up with each other. But I don't know any family that we couldn't match as for the contributions of our children, our grandchildren, and each other. The Haneys are a proud race, and it's wonderful to be a part of it, even if you're the oldest.
Thank you.